Okay, so I will fully admit to you that the conclusion is the worst sentence or worst paragraph of the entire paper. I hate writing conclusions. I don't like writing them because I feel like I've already said all this information in my paper, and so now I just have to figure out a new way to say it, and that's essentially what it is, and that's why I don't like it. So, when I write papers and when I write for my grad classes and things like that, typically my conclusion ends up being like 3 sentences long because I literally can't think of anything else to say. So that's what we're going to try to avoid. I'm going to do my best to give you some ideas, some sentence starters, some words that you can use, some transitions, things like that. But a lot of this is going to have to come from your brain. Okay? So you need out your introduction and your conclusion paragraphs. Specifically, we are going to look at the paraphrase thesis first. So, the first thing that you need to start out with is a transition. The 2 best transitions that you should start with are either to conclude or in conclusion. So I need you to pick one of those 2, to conclude or in conclusion, and write that down under your second big H. And don't forget to put a comma after in conclusion or to conclude. Don't forget to put a comma. So the easiest way I feel like to reword your thesis statement is to pick out keywords. Now, I about lost it on one of my blocks yesterday because they kept asking me, what's another word for, how do I reword this? You have a thesaurus in your computer. I am not going to be your thesaurus. You can either look things up or you can use a paper copy thesaurus that is in the back of my room. I am not going to tell you what words to use because if I do that, then I wrote your paper. And that's not what we want. So, my original thesis statement was, the extra money should be used for new classroom technology because it would help teachers reach students of all learning styles. So what I did is I picked out words that I knew that I could change up. So for example, I never mentioned in my first paragraph or first thesis statement that Ray Peck. So I mentioned Ray Peck in the second one. I changed all learning styles to different learning styles. I changed classroom technology. I took that out and I just said new technology. I added in benefits instead of help. Okay? You've got to figure out how you can reword your thesis statement so it's not the same sentence that you have in your introduction. Okay? Pull out some of those keywords and try to figure out, okay, which of these words can I think of synonyms for? You can still keep it in the order of claim and then reason, but you need to change it up so that it doesn't sound like exactly the same thing. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and give you about 4 minutes to write your paraphrase thesis, and then move on now to the paraphrased hook. And again, like I said before, you are just going to be rewording your hook. A good sentence starter for the paraphrased hook, if you pulled something from a direct quote. So let's say somebody last block had a quote that said, sports, I wish I could remember exactly what it said, but it was like, sports to some teenagers are their lifeline. It was something along those lines. And she had her citation afterwards, and it said Houston. So she said, as stated by Houston, sports can be really beneficial to students. Okay? She just took what they said and put it in her own words, but she also gave credit to the author by saying, as stated by Houston. I've had quite a few people actually throughout the course of all my blocks that have used the Ray Peck mission statement. And you could do that same thing again. As stated by Ray Peck's mission statement, their goal is to prepare students for the future or something along those lines. You need to take what you said in your hook and you need to reword it so that it comes off as not new information, but it doesn't say exactly the same thing that you said in your hook. So I'll give you my example. So my original hook was, An average $8,881 was spent per student at Ray Peck in 2015. So my paraphrased hook is, Ray Peck schools spend an average of over $8,000 per student every year. So I kept that per student, and I left that. I left Ray Peck in there, and I said instead of $8,881, I said over $8,000. So I changed it up a little bit, made it my own, sort of, but I still gave credit to the author. You still have to give credit in some way. You can say, as stated by, and then their name, if you have that, or you can just add a citation at the end, but you have to give credit to the author, even if you are paraphrasing. We talked about this yesterday with when we did the evidences and the elaborations and things like that. So you have to make sure that you still give credit to the author, even if you're changing up the words. Okay? Okay, so for your paraphrased lead and bridge, again, you just have to reword it and put it in new words. So you are going to explain how this information is connected to your original claim. You could even add in a paraphrased version of your original claim if you want to. But you just need to, again, reword your original lead and bridge by finding those keywords and changing them up. So my original lead and bridge was, extra money should be given directly to wherever it most benefits students. Adding technology to the classroom would greatly benefit students and teachers. So that was my original. My new one is, some of this extra money should go into funding new classroom technologies. That's my claim, essentially. You can add in your claim as your lead and bridge, okay? Think about what your claim is, and instead of putting the reason, maybe just put the claim. It can be one sentence. It doesn't need to be super long. It can be 1 to 2 sentences. I would caution you not to go over 2 sentences, because then your conclusion might end up being really long. Okay? Do you have any questions about this one? You guys are starting to work, so I'll let you go. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to your counterclaim and rebuttal. So this is where you are obviously going to, you are going to reword your counterclaim and rebuttal. So you're going to restate the other side of the argument with your response to those people. Use different words so that you're not just stating the same thing again. Now, this is where I have a little bit of a sentence starter for you. You can start with something along the lines of, some may believe, or although some believe, and then you can tell me what the other side says. Then you can add in a second sentence that says, depending upon which one you used, you could say, a solution would be, if you used a solution for your response, this is disproven by, if you're using textual evidence to disprove, or an example of where this isn't true is. So you can use those sentence starters to help you with the second sentence for your rebuttal. So my original was, some may believe that new technology would allow students to misuse the technology. Teacher monitoring would prevent this issue from happening. So my paraphrased claim and rebuttal, counterclaim and rebuttal, is, although some think that access to new technologies may be a bad thing, the solution is simple. Okay, I used that because that was my solution to my response. Districts must also invest in softwares to help teachers manage these new resources. So I'm going to give you some time for this one because you guys have already started ferociously writing. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the call to action. The call to action is pretty hard to write, especially with a formal academic paper, because you cannot use you. You cannot use we. You cannot use us. You have to keep it in third-person point of view. And the easiest way to do that is to give a direct command, okay? The call to action is where you tell your reader what you want them to do with all this brand new information. You can pretend that you are giving this essay to Dr. Monses, the superintendent. You can pretend like you're giving it to a member of the school board. You can pretend like you're giving it to one of your administrators, okay? Or you can pretend like you're just giving it to a member of the community. So, my example is, call the local school board to voice this new idea for extra funding. So last block I had somebody that said, can I just use your sentence? No, you cannot. However, you can use the school board if you want, but you cannot use my direct same thing. And if you need to, go ahead and write it out how you would with you, and then go back and say, okay, what can I change to people or one? What can I change here to make it be in third person? It may be easier to do it that way if you're like, I don't know how, I'm not going to use you. Write it out with you first, and then we can go back and we can make some edits to it. Okay? After you've finished your call to action, you have officially finished your outline and the bulk of your argumentative paper. Yeah, that's it.